I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, just in the nick of time, a key vote may save the Department of Homeland Security from a shutdown.
And the co-founder of the national movement Black Lives Matter invites you to a free discussion later tonight about social justice in San Diego and the nation. I'm Peggy Pico with our conversation about the impact of the movement just ahead.
Someone picks up the phone and calls with, terrible news or something like that. I feel like that comes with a joke.
Finding laughter in dark places, how Yiddish humor reveals the humanity of the characters in the Globe's new production. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. An update from Capitol Hill tonight. The Senate passed a bill to ensure full funding for Homeland Security. It will last, though, only for a week. The bill advances to the House just hours before the agency faced a partial shutdown. This is after a surprise vote from in the chamber blocked the bill. Now, some conservative lawmakers blasted it because it left out measures to reverse President Obama's executive orders on immigration reform. Of course, we'll have updates on the PBS NewsHour at 7. There are more health concerns tonight connected to California's drought emergency. Experts say West Nile virus may spread more aggressively this year. Dry conditions are forcing birds to move closer to populated areas for water sources. These birds may also be carrying the mosquito-borne illness. Another victim of the drought is in the heart of California, or the nation's breadbasket. Federal government says it's cutting water supplies to Central Valley farmers for the second year in a row. While some farmers are exempt from the cuts, others are scrambling and pumping from largely unregulated groundwater wells. Last year, hundreds of thousands of farms were left uncultivated. A new trial run of an Ebola drug developed right here in San Diego was announced today. The U.S. will work with Liberia to test it. KPBS science reporter David Wagner joins us now to explain their plan. David, first remind us what ZMapp is.
Sure. So this is a drug developed in San Diego by a small company called MAP Biopharmaceutical. It's made of antibodies that are grown in bioengineered tobacco leaves. And you might remember ZMapp making headlines last summer. That's when a handful of patients were given the drug in a last-ditch effort to save lives. Some of those patients did recover, including 2 American missionaries. But others died, so experts don't know if the drug is effective. That's why they're launching the trial announced today.
And how will this trial work?
The trial will include Ebola patients in Liberia and the U.S. Some of them will get doses of ZMapp, while others will receive only standard care. Comparing outcomes between these two groups should give researchers an idea of whether or not the drug works.
Now, we haven't heard much since the outbreak started tapering off. What took them so long to set up this trial, David?
That's a good question, Dwayne. It's true that Liberia is seeing fewer and fewer cases each week. So by now it could be a challenge to find enough patients for this trial. However, compared to normal trials, testing of ZMapp has been highly accelerated. The drug was developed just a year ago, and now ZMapp's makers are saying we could expect trial results within a month or two.
KPBS science reporter David Wagner. Whooping cough is breaking records. More than 2,000 cases confirmed by the county health department last year. Nearly 900 more than 2013 this year. So far, more than 100 cases were recorded, but none were fatal. Earlier this week, we told you about an independent review of racial profiling data from the San Diego Police Department. It shows officers pulled over black drivers at a rate twice their share of the population last year. Tonight, we look at how the Mid-City Division is trying to improve community relations. Once a month, officers invite neighbors to walk the beat with them. Speak City Heights videographer Brian Myers brings us the story.
On the way back, we're going to come back along this side. So I'm just focusing right now on the streets. The importance of the police coming out to walk with us is to show that the police are for the community. Back in the day, 35 years ago, it seemed like that they were just there to come and do their job and then they'd leave. But now, within the past 25 years, we've gotten to know the police very well. We have community relations officers who are out in the community wanting to know the people, getting to know the people. We're on first name basis with the police department. And to have the police come out here, that shows the community that they care about us, that we, the community, trust the police, and vice versa. The police trust us because we are their eyes and ears out in the community.
What are you guys picking up?
Trash.
Butts, cigarette butts.
You know, I'm not saying that the police department is without a few bad apples, because yes, you know, we've got a few bad apples, but you know what? Those few bad apples don't matter to us because the majority of our police department, I give them a high five. They outweigh those bad apples.
Come out of it as that's what you do.
City Heights has also been the center of demonstrations against fatal police shootings in other cities. Neighbors gathered last weekend for a vigil in honor of Tamir Rice. The 12-year-old was shot and killed by Cleveland police last November. The bike sharing program is about a month old in San Diego, and it's already facing challenges. One of them could come from a new state law, or rather bill. As KPBS reporter Claire Trageser explains, it would make it mandatory for riders to wear helmets.
After a year of delays, bike sharing finally got rolling in San Diego. Riders can now rent bikes from Deco Bike stations throughout downtown and North Park. The company says they've already sold thousands of rides. But a new California bill requiring bike helmets could put a damper on bike sharing and possibly bike riding in general. Deco Bike doesn't provide helmets with its bikes, so if the bill passes, riders would have to bring their own.
I think one of the things, especially when you think about bike share, even bike rentals, it removes the spontaneity. Having to look for a helmet, having to share a helmet, I think most people would be kind of grossed out by. So I don't think it would work in that sense.
Samantha Ollinger is director of the bike advocacy group Bike SD. She says helmets shouldn't be required for Deco Bike rentals.
It's got 3 speeds, you're not going very fast. It's hard to say that unless you really have terrible balancing skills, that sort of falling down and hitting your head's not going to be something to worry about.
State Senator Carol Liu, who wrote the bill, says the number of bike riders injured in accidents is increasing. In 2012, almost 14,000 cyclists were hurt in crashes. In 2008, the number was just under 12,000. Ollinger says while the bill was meant to keep riders safe, she doesn't support it. She thinks there are more important laws that could increase cyclist safety.
The drivers are driving way too fast because of how our roads have been designed, and focusing on making sure that our roads accommodate bicycle users, pedestrians, and drivers is really the way forward.
Deco Bike didn't respond to requests for comment on the bill, but its website says riders are encouraged to wear helmets. Claire Trageser, KPBS News.
What does an underwater photographer, a landscape photographer, and Ansel Adams have in common? They're all environmentalists who know how to capture one of our most precious resources, and you can see it this weekend at the Maritime Museum of San Diego.
This floating museum along San Diego's North Embarcadero downtown has a reputation for restoring and operating historic vessels. Now, it's hosting Fragile Waters for the next 6 months. A black and white exhibit born out of concern following the huge BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico 5 years ago.
We wanted to help people remind themselves of their personal connection with nature, with a capital N, through beauty.
Jean Folk Adams is the curator and daughter-in-law of the late Ansel Adams. 40 of his pieces are on display showing California waterways, along with just as many from Ernest Brooks, who at 80 still works 10 months a year, capturing icebergs in Antarctica and animal life underwater.
And to be with Ansel Adams, my mentor here, it's fabulous. And to be on board a ship right at sea level, and this is probably a little bit below right here, is wonderful.
One of the other elements involved in this exhibit has to do with garbage.
My trip to Indonesia I just returned from was basically about the plastics being thrown into the ocean, washing down the rivers, and I've been photographing the cause and effect of that in black and white.
Dorothy Kerper-Monolly says it can take hours to get the right shot. Her photos of critical marshlands along the Atlantic coast remind us of the importance they play in keeping our water systems and wildlife healthy and vibrant.
We need to be good stewards of this property, for most of all for our own sakes, because it nurtures us. these landscapes nurture us.
The Fragile Waters exhibit includes 119 photographs and opens this Sunday at the Maritime Museum of San Diego downtown. The slogan "Black Lives Matter" was heard in demonstrations after the killings of unarmed black men by police officers last year. It's now grown into a movement and a national organization. Peggy Pico talks with the group's co-founder about social justice.
Alicia Garza, project director at the National Domestic Workers Alliance and co-founder of the national movement Black Lives Matter. Welcome to Evening Edition.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Alicia, this started as a social media hashtag. We saw a lot of it during events surrounding the deaths of Ferguson and Garner, but it actually started before that. So how did the movement Black Lives Matter actually begin?
Black Lives Matter started actually in 2013 as a national organizing project after George Zimmerman was acquitted in the murder of Trayvon Martin. Folks like Patrisse Cullors and Opal Tometi, who are co-founders of Black Lives Matter, each of us felt deeply that it was important for us to build a base of people who were ready to counter anti-Black racism, which permeates our society. And so Black Lives Matter is really a call and response. It's a response to the virulent anti-Black racism that our society faces and struggles with, and it's a call to action that we take the time to dismantle that.
Sure, and I'm glad you said that. My next question was about this. Are there specific demands or call to action from the movement?
Absolutely. Well, they're the same demands that people have been fighting for a long time. We stand on the shoulders of giants, folks who have made sure that we have a seat at the table and that we're able to participate in our nation's democracy, that we're able to live in full dignity and respect, that we're able to make wages that support our families, that we have full housing and employment, and then, of course, that we stop and stem the tide of police brutality that's ravaging our communities.
So there's certain call to actions, as you said. What might be some examples of that?
Well, so for example, one of the things that we've been calling for is for our federal government to collect data on officer-involved shootings, which they don't currently do. We've also been calling for a reduction or an elimination of federal funding for the militarization of our police departments. There's no reason that our police departments need tanks, bazookas, and flash grenades in local communities.
Let me ask you about this. We've also seen the hashtags All Lives Matter and Police Lives Matter. What's your take on those messages?
Of course, all lives matter, but we live in a society where Black lives are systematically devalued and, in fact, targeted for destruction and demise. And so if we really want to build a world where all lives matter, then it means that we will fight like hell today for Black lives.
And what about the Police Lives Matter?
Police lives matter as well. And again, I think the issue here is that we have a system of policing that often functions in a discriminatory way. And so most police would tell you that they got into the profession not to be discriminatory, but to help people. And so what we want to see is a complete transformation of policing so that we can actually solve problems in our communities as opposed to criminalize them.
No, as you mentioned, this movement got started back in 2013 after Trayvon Martin. What kind of changes, or have you seen any changes since this got started?
Well, one of the big shifts that we've seen is a cultural and hegemonic shift where we're talking about race and racism in our society in a way that we haven't in decades, quite frankly. This movement has encouraged President Obama to speak on race twice in his presidency, which he hadn't been doing, and he's been in office for more than 6 years now. So we're seeing a real shift in a kitchen table conversation that's happening in households across the country that are really trying to figure out how do we rid our society of anti-Black racism so that we can live in a fully dignified and humanized society.
Now, you will be doing a free public discussion later tonight at the Malcolm X Library in Valencia Park, correct?
That's right.
What are you going to talk about there?
I'm going to talk about the origins of the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm going to talk about solidarity between social movements, and I'm also going to talk about racism and what it really is, because oftentimes we talk about it as if it's people being mean to each other, when in fact they are systems that are backed by power that impact the outcomes of people's lives.
How would you like to see this movement move forward, either politically or on a grassroots level? What direction would you like to see it go?
I'm really excited for the opportunity to talk about the totality of Black lives. And so not just about police brutality, but about unemployment, about the lack of education, about the increase in suspensions, particularly amongst Black girls. I'm excited also to talk about incarceration in this country and how we can cut mass incarceration so that we don't have millions of people behind cages, but instead that we realign folks with their families to better our communities once and for all.
You've been in San Diego for a few days now, giving
That's
these
right.
free public discussions. You're a graduate of UC San Diego,
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Okay. What kind of feedback are you getting from the San Diego area here on this movement?
I'm getting a lot of love here. It's really incredible to come back after more than 13 years, where I started as a student activist and a student organizer, and it's really powerful to see the work that people have been doing since I've been gone.
Are you surprised of the response here, that it's reached San Diego, so to speak, even though these events didn't happen here?
No. And certainly there are police killings that happen in San Diego,
sure.
but I'm not surprised at the reception that I'm getting. I think that what we've seen is that the movement is growing worldwide and that this is really touching the hearts and minds of people all over. So I'm excited and I'm humbled and ready to be here.
Alicia, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you being here. Now you can talk with Alicia Garza, co-founder of the movement Black Lives Matter. She'll be speaking tonight from 7 to 8:30 at the Malcolm X Library in Valencia Park. Her discussion is free and open to the public. More information at kpbs.org.
Reporters question a local attorney's business deals and possible conflicts of interest. The controversial One Paseo passes easily, angering some Carmel Valley residents, and the Marine Corps tests women to see if they're combat ready. I'm Tom Fudge. Join me for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
An aerial photo of the beach at Border Field State Park has gone viral. It shows more than 1,000 students lining up on either side of the border fence to spell a message, Unido por el Mar, or Unite for the Sea. It was taken at a cross-border cleanup organized by I Love a Clean San Diego. Since the photo was posted last night, the nonprofit says it's gotten swarmed by interest from the public, including multiple donations.
We've been really surprised and overwhelmed by the type of response that we've gotten from the community. People have been commenting in English and in Spanish, which is something that's rare, but it's encouraging, and it really shows that we have sort of a seamless binational region and we're not really cut off just because of that border.
This picture has reached more than 500,000 people on social media and has at least 16,000 likes on Facebook. For the Old Globe's new production of The 27th Man, the playwright found inspiration in an incident known as the Night of the Murdered Poets. It took place under Stalin's regime. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando says the play finds a surprising humor within the tragedy.
The Globe's Barry Edelstein directed the world premiere of Nathan Englander's The 27th Man in New York. Now he brings the play to San Diego.
It's based on an actual historical event that took place that very few people know about, which is this thing called the Night of the Murdered Poets in August of 1952.
There are another 24?
Nearly. We are 27 altogether. That was the order from Stalin himself, signed by his own hand. 27 dropped into this very same cell.
There were these great Yiddish writers that had been encouraged by the regime in the Soviet Union, and then near the end of his life, Stalin turned on them, arrested them, jailed them, tortured them, and executed them. That's all true.
Hearing about these writers just erased by Stalin, it really just touched on some deep sense of injustice that I couldn't handle, and I felt a real writer needs to give these people a story. Someone has to revive them.
I understood that our life, that Yiddish, it was done. Hitler was busy killing the Jewish body, but Stalin was smarter than that. Stalin, you could already see then, had a better plan. He was going to kill the Jewish soul.
In the play, Stalin wants to wipe out the Yiddish language along with its writers. Actor Hal Linden plays one of the writers.
One would imagine, for instance, if everybody in the world spoke the same language, we may not have the same rifts that we have. But then again, look how much culture and texture we'd be losing.
Wird mich schön.
And it is much about the process of writing as it is about the politics, I think. It's also about a lost culture.
Englander conveys some of that lost Yiddish culture in the way his characters speak.
Ostensibly, we are speaking Yiddish, even though it's in English for the audience to understand it. But he uses not only cadences, but constructions, practically translated directly from the Yiddish. You get that impression.
Stalin! Ruthless killer of for one word, for less he takes a life. Who knows for what nothing he takes ours?
I was living in New York, but getting educated fully in Yiddish rhythms, even though it was in English. I should say it. I should wait here all day for you to show up at 5 o'clock. Like everything, every sentence I heard was constructed in the reverse, and that's still how I think and still how I write.
His play also reveals a Yiddish sense of humor in the face of tragedy.
That's really the thing that distinguishes the Yiddish culture and the very specific kind of Jewish voice, which is this intensely ironic cast that's, funny and warm and witty and surprising, and that's like in every line of this play.
Whatever happened to taking a man out quietly and putting a bullet in his head?
It's dark and funny at the same time, and you never quite know which it is first.
Englander says he can't unravel the two.
If someone picks up the phone and calls with, terrible news or something like that, I feel like that comes with a joke.
Real work does not get done by a man in his underpants.
It's not to leaven it or lighten a production about imprisoned people. I just think that even in the moment, as I imagine it, there's no way that one could sustain, the gravity of that without, the humor of it, too.
It's a humor that emphasizes the humanity of the characters, and Englander's play ensures that we won't forget them or their Yiddish culture. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Remembering the logical first officer of the Starship Enterprise, actor Leonard Nimoy passed away today. In San Diego, Star Trek fans would line up for hours to see him at Comic-Con. The festival spokesman told the City News Service that Nimoy was a popular guest at Comic-Con and left a remarkable legacy on pop culture. Associated Press reporter Hannah Buckdahl has more on his life and career.
On board the Enterprise, Mr. Spock.
Leonard Nimoy, the actor known and loved by generations of Star Trek fans as the extremely logical, half-Vulcan, half-human Mr. Spock, has died. Family members say he passed away at his home in Los Angeles on Friday of end-stage chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Nimoy played Mr. Spock, the calm counterpoint to William Shatner's often emotional Captain Kirk, on the revered cult TV series from 1966 to 1969, and later on the big screen. It's a role that he could never really escape, despite numerous other acclaimed turns as an actor, director, and TV host. On Monday, Nimoy posted what would be his last tweet. "A life is like a garden. Perfect moments can be had, but not preserved, except in memory. LLAP, shorthand for his signature phrase, live long and prosper." Leonard Nimoy was 83. Hannah Buckdahl, Associated Press.
Nimoy inspired generations of sci-fi fans, from NASA astronauts to President Obama, who met him in 2007. He said in a statement today it was only logical to greet him with the Vulcan salute, the universal sign for live long and prosper. And after 83 years on this planet and on his visits to many others, it's clear Leonard Nimoy did just that.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next news hour, the political firestorm behind the Israeli Prime Minister's address to Congress. That's Friday on the PBS NewsHour.
It's official. The Mira Mesa High School Marching Band and Color Guard will march in next year's Rose Bowl parade. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler was at the school for the big announcement.
This band rocks. Mira Mesa's marching band will be the first San Diego high school marching band to perform in the Rose Bowl parade in nearly 30 years. Trombonist Liam Barrett remembers when the band was told they were going to be in the parade.
Everyone was jumping up and down. It was an incredible experience for all of us.
These students can't contain their excitement and love for Mrs. C.
Make a lot of noise for Miss C.
That's the band director, Gene Christensen. Mrs. C believes in music, and the kids believe in her.
Music crosses every single discipline. It crosses math, English, history, science.
Babette Bautista says for her daughter, a sophomore clarinet player, the band is more than just an after-school activity.
I saw how it brought my daughter out. Not that she was a shy person to begin with, but the camaraderie of the music, the band, she's got a second family.
And if you follow Bautista's logic, this auditorium is full of adopted, extended family. Important people from City Councilman Chris Cate to Superintendent Cindy Martin came out to watch the Tournament of Roses president, Mark Matheson, make the official announcement.
And out of about 100 applications, you, Sapphire Sound, was chosen to represent the San Diego Unified School District, Southern California, and to be part of our America's New Year's celebration. It really shows, well, okay.
After all the officials congratulated the students, all the anxious, camera-wielding parents wanted to see and hear was the Sapphire Sound. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.